back to the Marketing Brief. I am your host, Brian Aquan, and this is the podcast where we briefly touch on topics across the marketing landscape. And we're always joined by an industry expert. And today we are joined by Christina Spalding. Christina, welcome into the podcast. It's a pleasure
Thanks,
to have
Brian.
you. Would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners? Kind of talk about what your focus is right now?
Sure thing. My name's Christina Spalding. I started Manzanita Marketing 3 years ago to help small and medium-sized businesses expand their reach beyond the English-speaking market. So whether you're looking to serve clients in linguistic minorities near you, for most of the U.S., that's Spanish, although it might also be a few other languages, or if you're looking to go overseas and start exporting into Europe or Asia,
Yeah.
I'm
That's
here to help.
awesome. I am so interested in understanding consumers and working back from the consumer. And I can think of no better way to start than to localize in their language. Is that a great way into this? It's to really understand the consumer. You've got to speak, quote unquote, their language. And in this case, it's literally their language.
It is. And what's interesting is that sometimes you have the same consumer needs. So a lot of times here in the US, your Spanish-speaking consumer has the same pain points as your English-speaking consumer. So you can market the same thing the same way.
Yeah,
All you
of
have to
course.
do is translate. Sometimes there are slight variations in what one market needs or how one market perceives a product versus how another market perceives a product. So there was a case study around the Got Milk campaign, right? So in English, Got Milk, you got the little mustache, and it was like a very fun, wholesome campaign. But the way they translated it in Spanish and the cultural assumptions that were in many of the Spanish-speaking households, this was, back in the 80s and 90s, was like, milk is a staple. You have milk like you have running water. So the question "got milk" came off more of an accusation than like a friendly banter. So the campaign in its first iteration in the Spanish-speaking market flopped, and they had to retranslate.
Essentially, they were shouting
So
at people.
there's a cultural awareness when you're going into a Spanish-speaking market that a lot of times, yes, you can just translate. But sometimes if you're trying to do something funny, you want to double check with the native speaker before
Yeah,
you
and
launch
I'd
your
love to
campaign.
jump to that. So I was going to ask you about the tools because obviously there's a lot of translation tools and that can help you get most of the way there. But solving for the culture is always challenging, right? So how do you go about solving for culture in a certain neighborhood?
Yeah. Um, the best way to do it is to have somebody who is
Hmm.
either currently in the culture or somebody who has been in the culture, deeply steeped in the culture for a long time. They might not currently be in it, but they kind of keep the pulse. They know. And you can get those people in a lot of different ways. So there are full-time translators, humans, that bridge that gap. They're available. They usually charge per word, and they usually have the full cultural experience. So you can go to a translator or a cultural marketing firm in cities where you have a strong Spanish population. You'll also have language firms who specialize in translation or Spanish marketing, things like that. So those exist. They're the premium option. But if it's the first time you're working with this particular culture, it would make sense to start and pay more money up front and do it right the first time than to have errors or like
Yeah.
cultural friction points where you put all your money in this campaign and then it
Yes.
fails. Like you put the money in the ad part rather than the creative part. If you put the money in the creative part first, make sure you have cultural fit, language fit, product market fit, then the ad spend gets justified because you have a good return. So I am very much
Yeah.
a human in the loop
We
type
love,
person.
yeah.
If you're budget limited, then you can use AI as a rough draft. And then you can still engage a translator or a proofreader, one of these marketing companies, and say, hey, here's the rough draft. Can you proofread it for me? And proofreading costs less than the research and the customer profile and the original translation or creation. So you can you can leverage AI and say, hey, here's what AI said. How much
Hmm.
am I on the nose? And then you can go from there. So you can use AI to reduce your costs, but you check it with somebody from the culture
That makes sense.
first. And the last tip, this is
Pro tip.
pro tip here, check with your Institute of Higher Learning, whether that's a local community college, whether it's a university, a trade school, check with a post high school educational institution and see if they have students. Like community colleges and universities are great for this because they often have marketing majors who want to get out there and do stuff and get internships or just experience. So if you contact your local college and say, hey, do you have a marketing group, a marketing class? In that class, do there happen to be Spanish speaking students? Do there happen to be Mandarin speaking students? I'd love to do a project. I'd love to get an
That's
intern.
smart.
And you can tap into the next generation. And because they're college students, they're
Hmm.
usually very affordable and it's a win for everybody. You get great talent, the college student gets experience, and you both get that access to the
Yes,
local
that's a
community.
good pro tip. I imagine, I love that you kind of go through multiple steps of this, right? Of just like, okay, you can use technology, but the human in the loop is something we talk a lot about on this podcast, which is something we really love because the humans provide something that the machines do not, right? But I imagine it's so important to have those multiple levels of checks because even one mistake here can really shoot the whole strategy in the foot, right? If you're getting the language wrong, really, you're completely undercutting the whole effort of trying to reach out, really, again, speak to them in their own language, right?
Yes. You run the same risk in English, right? If you approach your customer and you don't have the right pain point, if your hook doesn't catch in English, then it doesn't work. And it's the same when you're translating or you're adapting for another culture.
Mhm.
You're running that same risk, right? It's just you have to trust another person or entity that you're doing it right, right? We can read our own copy, when we write a hook, when we write an ad. We can read it and we can go, yeah, that hits the mark of what I think the customer would
Absolutely.
want. When you're doing it in another language, we can't do it ourselves. So you really have to trust
Mhm.
your provider that you're
Absolutely.
working with.
I mean, Spanish is probably the example you get the most and probably the work you get the most. Are there other languages that you've worked in?
I actually specialize in German and French. So I speak fluent German. I lived in Germany for 6 years. I studied abroad in France. I studied French for years and years and years. So I look for and get work in those languages. I love working with companies that are coming from Europe to the US because it's an interesting way to shift their pitches, their solutions, and see, is the
Right.
consumer the same? Is a European consumer the same as a US consumer? Are the pathways the same? The distribution channels? How do we need to adapt the marketing for this product or the product itself
Yeah.
for the
Is
US
there an
market?
example you
And sometimes there's like no adaptation, but sometimes there's a lot of adaptation and you have to just adjust things here and there, right? So it's very interesting.
is
It's
there an
super
example
fun. I
that
really
you
enjoy
could
it.
share with us on a European product coming to the US?
So the first one that I worked with was a company called Text Broker, and this was back in the mid 2000s. They had a thriving content creation business in Europe, and they expanded to the US, and I was their first employee. And they had translated the website themselves. And I was like, okay, that works, but if we're going to scale, we need to polish this. The sentences were all grammatically correct, but they didn't encapsulate the brand the way it
Mhm.
needed to be
Sure.
encapsulated. So we had to rework the content. We had to build marketing around convenience, quality, but mostly convenience. But it was a balance between the convenience and the quality. Having native speakers and vetted, you know, US based individuals, we have W-9s from everybody, was an important quality point in the industry at the time. Now, the industry has been decimated by AI because if you're going to have quality issues, like you get it through AI. But at the time, it was important to showcase that, yes, you can trust this system. There are things to be aware of, all of that good stuff. It was really fun and a very interesting place to
I'm
be
sure.
from a
And yeah, and
marketing
of course that's
perspective.
changed a lot. Well, I always love to ask my guests what's something they're excited about right now. It can be in your professional capacity or in your personal life, but is there something you're excited about as we're nearing the middle of 2026 here?
So, I actually just hired my first employee at the beginning of April, and I hired an
There you go.
intern
Your
from
own
my
tip.
local university. So that's why, like, the secret tip, I am using the secret tip. Even better, my local university had a grant for business
Nice.
owners to hire and interns through the business school. So I cannot say enough how helpful a intern can be and how cost effective it can be. So talk to your local institutes of higher knowledge and see what options there are. I was an intern way back when I started my career. It changed my life.
Wow.
That's how I got to
Nice.
Germany, was an internship. And so when I say it changed my life, like really I relocated. um I want to be that catalyst for my intern now. She speaks Spanish. I chose her partially because she speaks Spanish, partially because she's in marketing, and partially because she just had a great presence when we met. And because I had her additional language, I
That's
closed
great.
a Spanish speaking deal. So we're going to be doing English and Spanish website for a nail salon. So really, I'm seeing some growth, getting new employees, and, you know, making smart
That's
decisions
great.
for the business. I'm
Awesome.
very
Well, we share
excited.
your excitement. How do people reach out to you if this is something they're looking for? Is LinkedIn a good way, or do you have some other way to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is great. You can find me at Christina Spalding. You can find me at Manzanita Marketing. That's MANZ as in zebra ANITA Marketing. On Instagram and Facebook, it's Manzanita MKTG. And that's also my URL is Manzanita MKTG. MANZANITA M as in Mary
Manzanita, is that,
KTG.com.
what does that translate to? Small apple? Yeah, okay.
Little
That's what I
apple
thought.
in Spanish.
Nice. Well, it's been a joy meeting you and getting to know you and hearing about the international marketing part of this. So thank you for being a guest.
Absolutely. Brian, thank you for having me. It was so nice.
This has been a brief conversation. I'm your host, Brian Aquan, and this is the Marketing Brief Podcast. And to everyone listening out there, stay curious.